So you'll get men dressed as women going in women's toilets and taking used products from those sanitary bins and putting them in their person. Imagine that. You hire a babysitter, or Janet's coming to babysit your kids, and you open the door and it's 6'2" Janet with a cock. When we're in a recession with our religious belief, why would we bring in another that's more prescriptive, barbaric, horrendous? There's not a country in the world that is dominated by Islam that is one that I would want to go to. Somebody said, "Are you a biologist?" And I was like, well, I'm not a vet, but I know what a dog is. A man in the Olympics punching a woman in the face in the ring and everyone saying that he's a brave and stunning woman.
You're a man, you're a woman, don't conflate the two ever. Sort of end of discussion.
Penises in the women's changing rooms. I don't want any men in a space with my daughter ever. I've had the police at my door for being, and I quote, untoward about paedophiles. Pronouns are really, really important. To be able to say that in law they are something that they're not is nuts. If you're a victim and you're by a man who calls himself a woman, you have to say she, her in the call. If you're worried about what's happening to this country, an enemy within, or you think that the Islamification of this country is something that worries you, you do have the right to speak about these things. It doesn't have to be a battleground, but it might have to be a battleground.
Do you think one day there's a chance you could get murdered?
I want to say a quick thank you to our sponsors, Gold Seal. I use their products every single day, and now I finally get to work with them. I use their products for anti-inflammatory, reduced anxiety, better sleep, and mental clarity. I'm going to put a link to their website in the description, along with a 10% discount code for you to take advantage of. Go and have a look at their website, see if there's anything in there for you. I hope you enjoy this week's episode, and good health.
Kellie-Jay 𝐿𝐵𝐿. How'd you do?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
I'm well, thank you for coming on. A fierce women's rights activist. And it's funny because on one of the interviews I've done, and I can't remember which one it is, it'll probably come back to me, but somebody wrote in the comments section, I bet you haven't got the balls to have Kellie-Jay 𝐿𝐵𝐿 on your show. Why would somebody say that to me?
I have no idea. I don't know, because I speak truthfully, directly.
I know what it was. I had a man with body dysmorphia that now identifies as a woman that's had the cock and balls lobbed off. I interviewed him. Obviously, you've got the whole trans woman phrase, term, nonsense. So it wasn't like I was pushing the trans ideology by any stretch. But yeah, someone, said, I bet you haven't got the balls to have her on. I'm like, well, I absolutely have.
Good. Well, I'm glad you've still got yours, even if he'd chosen to cut us off.
Oh, they're going nowhere. Yeah. So you're here. Thank you. Because some people will know exactly who you are.
Yes.
And they'll be looking forward to the next hour and a half, and some people won't. So give me a little bit about your background and also what sparked your activism.
Okay, so I'm a very happily married woman with 4 children, and I was looking after them. And then 2015, Tories got elected, and I joined a lefty group online, and then that started. It was supposed to be just for women, and then loads of men came in, and I'm talking truckers in bad makeup and dresses, calling themselves women. And so I just realised in that forum that you weren't allowed to ask questions, you weren't allowed to talk about it, you weren't allowed to call them men, you weren't allowed to say he. And I just asked one of them one day, "Are you sure you identify as a woman?" And then the sort of vicious attacks came. And then I was like, I'm not allowed to talk about this. Well, then that's what I want to talk about. So I started talking about it in about 2015. And the first thing I did, which brought me into the public consciousness, is, well, 2 things. One, I got interviewed by the police in 2018 for hate speech really early. So I was probably one of the first, if not the first person in the country to be interviewed by the police for calling men men and saying it's wrong to castrate children. And then that same year, I put a billboard up of the dictionary definition of the word woman, and that was removed for hate speech.
Wow. Was there something else you said that I'm missing that you got approached by the police for?
Well,
that doesn't sound too hateful to me.
The threat to tell the truth about these men, I think, is basically what the issue is. But yeah, just don't cut off your children's testicles and fold their penis inside. I mean, that was one of the main things I was talking about.
Well, I'm actually shell-shocked that we're now in a position where we're going to have a conversation about this topic. I can't even believe it's a topic. To me, we use the trans woman as an example because it gets very confusing for me. But you're a man, you're clearly ill, and I'm very sorry to hear that. But don't make your problem somebody else's problem by then sort of changing your whole ideology and terminology and pronouns, and then try and invade the spaces and the sports. You would just think it's sort of clear cut and dry. You're a man, you're a woman. Don't conflate the two ever. Sort of end of discussion. But here we are. I mean, we've just had the court ruling.
Yes.
So because you've been fighting it for so long, and what you call holding the line, I've got nothing but respect for you for that. Do you feel like that new Supreme Court ruling is a victory? And has anybody come and apologised to you?
Oh, God, no. Nobody's apologised. It's not really a victory, but it is. It shouldn't be a victory because they just said, yes, this is the law. Nothing's changed. The only thing that's changed is all the people that were under this illusion that a woman doesn't mean woman and sex didn't mean sex. They've now been corrected. But they're going to fight it because they've also been indoctrinated for the last sort of 15 years since the Equality Act. And in fact, we'll go before that. So 2004 is when we had something called the Gender Recognition Act. Gender is a nebulous concept. Nobody knows what it is. Like, we can kind of guess what it is, but I don't think it's something that we should base any laws on because I think it's bull. So we should really have always based our laws on sex. So it seems quite weird that gender is this other layer that people describe, that I'm just going to say, I think that's bullshit. I think gender dysphoria is bullshit. I think gender dysmorphia is bullshit. I don't agree with any of these terms. I don't think they're useful either. The same as patriarchy. I don't think that's useful. But when it comes to this particular issue, we all knew what it was, and then we had to pretend that it wasn't. And you can have legal recognition of gender when we all know that your biological sex is male. You can have a gender as female. So even that is a source of confusion. And whether or not I agree in body dysmorphia when it comes to gender, when we don't know what that is, or whether I don't, doesn't make any difference to whether or not there should be penises in the women's changing rooms, or even penises that have been lopped off and tucked inside. I don't want any men at any point in a space with my daughter or your daughter or anyone else's mum or any woman ever.
No, I agree. I mean, we're so big on feelings these days as well. But if we are going to be big on feelings and human rights, what about the woman's right and the women's feelings? Yeah, okay, some guy may feel alien being a man, and he, changes his wardrobe and all of a sudden he's a woman. Okay, well, you feel nice and cozy in a woman's toilet. But what about the women and the young female girls, children that are in there? Surely their feelings should outweigh the one individual person. It's is it controlling? Is it dominance? It's clearly an ideology cult type thing. But is this just to dominate and control? Is it a power trip they're on? I
think what we have to remember is the majority of people pushing this movement are men. The majority of people opening the door to those men are women. So women have this kind of a need to be seen to be kind. Don't confuse that with kindness, because it's not about kindness. It's about being seen to be kind. It's a hyacinth bouquet of kindness. It's not real. But those women want that to be, that's their currency. That's their social currency. That's how they signify to other people that they're good people. But the men, and you know men better than I do, but they are compelled, these particular men are compelled by a sexual fetish. That's what gets them in these places. That's what gets them happy in these places. That's what makes them kind of move their whole lives around this particular fetish, because it's incredibly strong and powerful. Now, you use the word ill. I kind of refuse to use the word. I won't even say mentally ill. It feels like it's letting them off. And this is an absolute compulsion. And this is something that I think they can eradicate those behaviours. So if you think about trans as a behaviour, a set of behaviours, and not as an identity, not as anything inherent that's real, that's kind of where we are. These are just badly behaved people.
And so we've seen like trans, what they're called TRAs, trans rights activists.
Yes.
I'm learning the lingo, you see. But what rights haven't they got?
Well, this is the point. They don't. The right they want is the right to go into women-only spaces, essentially. And women who call themselves men, they are used by men who call themselves women to help open the doors for those men. No one cares about these 5'2" women with silly beards. Nobody cares about them at all. Nobody's interested in their rights. They just facilitate this. And that's the same with children. these men retrospectively pretend that they knew since they were 3 or 4 years old that they were trans. That's also not true, but it helps stop the accusations of it being a fetish.
It's crazy to think that if I went into a woman's public toilet today, whether it was there are only cubicles, went in there, flopped my cock out, took a piss, I'd be arrested immediately, put in the local newspaper, probably the National, and I'd have to be held to account for the rest of my life. Whereas if I put a wig on and said, hey, I don't identify as Liam Tufts, I want to be called Sharon and I want to take a piss here, to think that only 2 weeks ago I would have got a pass.
Yes.
No problem. Surely people can see that is it's beyond insanity. It's a fucking insult.
Well, look, when you have an ideology that's not based on anything true, then everything has to be true that it says about itself. So you can't question any part of it. There's no part of it's logical. So everything is illogical. Therefore, everything that is illogical becomes something that you can't question. You just can't. It's too fragile. And it can go to the nth degree. So wherever your brain might take you about, but that could even do that. Well, yeah, they can. So they can have boys winning races at school against girls. You can have a man in the Olympics punching a woman in the face in the ring and everyone saying that he's a brave and stunning woman. You know, there's no place that this won't go. Well, we did.
You know, when you say it out loud, it's funny. It's like, Christ, just open your ears, people, and listen to the words that are being used. It's madness. And I think since I've been sort of dipping my toes into this arena, I think that comedians could have really, really helped prevent this issue and squash it, because what better topic for ridicule is that? And for me, like, nothing's off limits. You want to joke about, short, bald podcasters, I'm your man. I'll take it all day long. Like, religion, ideologies, cults, nothing is above ridicule. And what could be better than to mock a man that thinks he's a woman and to mock the people that accept that and facilitate it? So where have all the comedians been? Because you must have had your eye on this.
Well, I think they were worried about being cancelled. I think they're cowards, for a start. I think it's really interesting. You've got someone like Frankie Boyle, who goes onto the television and says about Jordan's, Katie Price's son with special needs raping her. Like, that's a hilarious joke. I mean, it wasn't a very funny joke either, and I agree with you. I think you can joke about anything. I say to my kids all the time, you can joke about anything, but it's got to be funny. Otherwise, it's just offensive. But, it just has to be funny. It has to really hit the mark.
Make it intelligent.
Yeah, and then you can say anything. But Frankie Boyle then, I think many of the comedians either knew someone or had a kid that was pretending to be the opposite sex. And so it became off limits really early. Plus, you've got a very heavy sort of gay man represented in the BBC and places that you might access normal comedy, and the TRAs are rabid, so they will try and cancel an entire venue. Like, I can't stay in. We used to have events inside. I can't guarantee that my event will ever happen if I book a venue, because people just won't rent to me.
Before I come on to the attacks that you've come under, so you've got TRAs and we've got TERFs.
Yes.
Again, something new to me, but apparently I'm a TERF. So what is a TERF, and am I a TERF, and are you Queen TERF?
Well, I think I'd like to say I was Queen of the TERFs. A TERF used to be a trans-exclusionary radical feminist. Well, I'm not a feminist. I might be quite radical, but I'm certainly not a feminist. And I don't think you're a radical feminist either. I could be wrong.
Will you say that?
And so it just became this word that was used, and it used to have the impact of silencing. So it'd be like TERF, bitch, whore, witch. It'd be those sort of words that you can throw at a woman.
All those terms of endearment.
Yeah, all those terms of endearment. And I just said, right, fine, I'm a TERF. Let's just have it. I'll just say it, fine, and then we can just get on with what I want to talk about.
Why isn't every woman up in arms? Why does it take someone like you? No pun intended. Why does it take someone like you to put your cock on the block and really, really take huge risks in order to just push back against this madness? Like, where are all the other women?
Well, there's a large portion of women who want to signal that they're very nice people. They're just so nice that I just think that men can come in our space. So there's those women, and they will mostly be well paid women who don't suffer consequence. So it's not going to be. It's not going to be someone cleaning offices who feels uncomfortable when that bloke at the end of the night comes and uses the women's toilets when she's in there cleaning. It's not going to be her. She's going to she'll have a visceral reaction and she'll understand. And it's not going to be women who can't afford to send their kids to like the nice health club where there's beautiful changing rooms and cubicles. It's not those women. So those women often are the ones to speak because they've got the most time. So luxury women, they've got the most time to speak out about how wonderful they are. Most other people either haven't come across it enough, think it's a small issue, or think they can't talk about it. And some people will be caught in this thing of, I'm not up with it. I must be old fashioned. There must be something that I've missed. I don't want to look stupid. And then there's, even in my movement, if we can call it a movement of women's rights activists, there are factions of women on the left that know how this is spoken about, how they're spoken about, how you can get cancelled, and are still happy to cancel people on other issues. There's a lot of women like me who maybe aren't speaking, but are very much like me, the women that talk too much at the school gate, the woman that's likely to go and tell someone off in the pub if they're talking too much, if they're shouting at their missus. They'll go up to that man and they'll be like, don't talk to that. I'm that woman. I'm the woman that doesn't walk by. And I think there's loads of us. I just happen to have a bit of a platform.
Yeah, you and my nan would have got on like a house on fire, let me tell you that. You mentioned fetishes earlier, and I thought about AGPs, autogynephiles.
Yes.
So before I ask you my next question, which I'm very curious about, and I've often scratched my head, can you just explain to people watching and listening what an autogynephile is?
Well, we could just say raging pervert who likes wearing women's clothes. It's basically someone who is sexually aroused by the thought and themselves as a woman. So they'll put... there's something called trans widows, and those would be women whose husbands have decided that they're women. And what those husbands do is they're coercive control. So they'll start with like little bits of infringing that woman's boundaries. And these would be autogynephiles. So they might put a bit of nail varnish on and tell his wife it's fine. And she doesn't really like it, but it's just around the house. And then it might be a bit of eyeliner. And then it might be like, what's really happening is he'll be fully kind of fetishized as soon as she's out, and he'll be wearing her clothes and taking hundreds and hundreds of photographs of himself. But that woman will eventually end up where she has no agency whatsoever in her marriage, and it's like a very abusive cycle. So an AGP is someone who is sexually aroused by the thought of himself as a woman.
So if a man is sexually aroused by the thought of being a woman, what happens to the man's erection once he realises he's got an erection?
The thing about fetish...
Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. So years and years ago, I'm going to qualify my fetish knowledge. Years and years ago, when Channel 4 just started, because I'm old, I remember them having a programme on fetish. And one man's fetish was to get his penis grated with a cheese grater in a brothel and had his testicles slammed in a dirty toilet seat, right? Now, I don't think any of us can connect sexual pleasure with that. But his receptors get miswired, redirected. So he can associate that pain, that level of pain. I mean, I can't think that anyone's getting an erection while you're getting your penises slammed in a toilet seat. But I don't have a penis, I don't know.
I can confirm I definitely wouldn't get one of those.
So I think that fetishes, like, people are mistaken if you think it's all about erection, because it's gone way beyond that. Like, someone can even have a fetish where they have their penis removed. So that's certainly not about an erection. That's about a disordered, muddled kind of wiring. There's a really brilliant woman called Sheila Jeffries, very, very clever woman, and she wrote a book on fetishes. And there was a man whose fetish is slurry. So he'll literally go in a slurry pit and masturbate. And the family could see him from the farmhouse. So they built a barn, and then he still was doing it. So they covered the slurry pit. And so he burnt down the barn, like getting in the way of a man and his fetish, because it's a real driver. Like if we think paedophilia is a fetish, I'm not saying that people that dress as women and paedophiles are the same, but it's the same kind of drivers. And if you think about someone like Jimmy Savile, right, what did he do in order to rape kids? Well, he ordered his entire life so he could gain access to victims. And that's because that's what his sexual fetish is. And that's the same as these men. They'll order their entire lives around the sexual fetish, which is not necessarily associated with erections, although it will be. So you'll get men dressed as women, going in women's toilets and going through the sanitary bins and taking used products from those sanitary bins and putting them in their person.
Wow. I just want to mention to people watching and listening, because we just went on a bit of a tangent there talking about.
Sorry.
Well, no. It was my line of questioning. I'm talking about erections. You're talking about masturbation. I just want to say that your husband is in the corner of the room, so we're not having an inappropriate conversation. It's all very much out in the open, as the internet will see. The word transphobia has become extremely strong, a bit like Islamophobia. I can't see the irrational fear of a man thinking he's a woman. Why do you think that word has become so strong?
Because if you can characterise something as a phobia, then you can stop someone talking about it. That's simply all it is. It's just a power play, isn't it? Because I'm genuinely fearful of men in women-only spaces. Like, I don't think there's anything irrational about that at all. I'm genuinely fearful of an ideology that subjugates women, by design.
What attacks have you come under since speaking out against this? I mean, media, government, police, friends, family.
So I've been interviewed 3 times by the police under caution for tweets. Started, as I said, back in 2018. So it's like 3 times in 2 years. I've had the police at my door for being, and I quote, and I promise this is true, untoward about paedophiles. But I went and did a live stream straight away because I was so like, oh my God.
So disappointing to hear that.
Yeah, well, I think what they really meant, this is the truth. I think I'd accused men who go in female-only spaces where they know children to be. I said that they're predatory paedophiles because I think they are. I think if you want to transgress the boundaries of children and you get your cock out in front of kids, I think you're a paedophile. I don't know why we need to think of it as anything else. I think we use the word too little, as far as I'm concerned, in our society at the moment. So that was the police. Oh, and I also got arrested for trying to talk in COVID because it wasn't about Black Lives Matter. It was about women's rights. So obviously, if you were marching for BLM during COVID, you couldn't catch it. But if you were marching against the vaccines, or if you were going and meeting about women's rights, and you were prone to catching COVID. So we had, honestly, it was, I wish I'd videoed, there's a video of my arrest, but we go up to Leeds and there's women in mobility scooters, and some of the women are like 70, 80 years old. And we had, the police phoned me the day before and said, if you go and meet, then we're going to arrest you. And I was like, well, come on then. That's fine by me. Just do it. That's fine. That's great for me. That's exactly what I want. Thanks very much. Do come. So he comes and they're like, women's rights isn't political. I was like, I think they are political and I think I have every right to be here. So they arrested me on a live stream, but we had 2 police vans full of police. As they're coming in, there's literally women in mobility scooters. It was quite hilarious, but nothing about 2-tier policing is totally fine. And then they couldn't switch my phone off, so they put it next to me in the police van. So then I live streamed the whole thing, and I was still monetized then because I'm not monetized by YouTube. I'm not allowed to sell on Facebook, so everything I do is merch. That's how I raise my money, and we make it ourselves. So I wasn't allowed to advertise on Facebook. I had a really big account on Facebook that was cancelled. I was banned for 4.5 years from Twitter. So I had about 4 viral moments that I never got to capitalise on because I wasn't on Twitter. One of them was going to America where somebody said, "Are you a biologist?" And I was like, well, I'm not a vet, but I know what a dog is. And that went super viral. About 60 million people watched that. I'm not allowed, there's quite a few manufacturers who used to work with me who now won't make my stuff, including Hello Print, which is one of the biggest printers in Europe. I'm not allowed a Patreon account. Quite a few people won't let me have a bank account. I've just been debanked, actually. My American store has just lost its capacity to take money. Change.org, I think. Oh, Mumsnet. I'm banned from Mumsnet.
That's good going.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's about it. There might be others.
What about death threats? Have they come your way?
Well, yeah, yes. And there's quite a sustained abuse campaign that's targeting my family. Pictures of my kids and where they went to school was online quite a few years ago. There's only one of them still at school now. But yeah, like where I live has been online repeatedly. There is a man, I don't remember whether he got a suspended sentence, but he threatened to, I think it rip my head off and burn my house down with me in it. So that did actually go to court. There was another one who threatened myself, Rosie, some MP called Rosie, and J.K. Rowling, and he was criminalised. But yeah, I've had significant threats. We've had to put extra security on my house.
I'm now abundantly clear that you have to tread carefully. I mean, I never thought you would need to on a topic such as men wanting to be women.
No, well, you do. I mean, do you know what happened to me in New Zealand?
No.
No, okay. So I genuinely nearly lost my life in New Zealand. So I did a tour of Australia, and when I was outside of Melbourne, so I did quite a few cities, and Melbourne was one of them. And long story short, just down the way, because TRAs were coming, some men, they were very camp, but some men that called themselves Nazis came. And they were associated with me by the press and politicians. They were nothing to do with me whatsoever. And like I say, they were really camp. But anyway, there were two lots down and they were all dressed in black blocks. So we thought they were Antifa. And then it gets reported that they're not. And New Zealand had tried to keep me out of the country. There was a High Court injunction, like an emergency High Court injunction to try and stop me to get in the country. When I got in the country, on my flight from Australia to New Zealand, the hotel cancelled my reservation. And I'd had a few police escorts when I'd arrived at certain hotels in Australia. Like, I'm no one. I'm no one. I'm nothing. I'm no one. I'm a woman that started selling T-shirts on her kitchen table. And then I'm traveling around the world. And you must have moments like this as well, where you're like, I literally just say the things that everybody else thinks. And because of that, I literally say women don't have penises. And I'm having to get like armed escorts sometimes. And I have to have close protection. Like in America, I'll have close protection and they're armed. And in Australia, not so much. Anyway, so I'm on my way to New Zealand. And when I get there, I'm detained and searched, like all of my luggage for about 2 hours, meticulously. And I've been travelling for 4 weeks at that time. So there's a lot of...
Well, they're looking for a bomb?
Well, they weren't looking for anything. They were looking to inconvenience me because they didn't search me at all.
And intimidate.
Yeah, and they just searched every single, like she's picking up my underwear and it was really undignified. And then I had this hotel. When I woke up the next day, there was a note under my door, like a threatening note under my door where somebody had obviously seen me go in the hotel. And then I go to somewhere called Albert Park. And if you haven't seen it, you should watch it because it's quite incredible. So as I get there, there's just loads of people. Now, New Zealand's got about 52 people in it, and they were all in that park. So there's 2,000. The guesstimate is about 2,000 TRAs with, like, calling me a Nazi, stomp a TERF, like, threatening messages and everything on their big boards. And I get into the middle of the rotunda, which is like a bandstand. And I have 10 security because my previous security had cancelled. They didn't want to do it. They were too afraid. So this other security firm, it cost like 10,000. And we get in there and then I get souped. So somebody comes and throws this soup on me. And so it's a great image. Oh. I don't know if you've seen it. When I've got half of I'm covered in orange.
I have seen that. I didn't know it's New Zealand. Yeah, go on, carry on.
So I've got this soup in my hair and I'm like still videoing and it is a pretty impressive photo. I'm so glad someone took it. But the police were supposed to be there. So I have to coordinate always with the police to do anything because of the threats. And we're looking out and they're breaking the barriers. and this is all the TRAs are breaking the barriers and they're coming and they're so angry. And then they start coming in from behind on the rotunda, and my security guy says to me, "The police aren't coming." I'm like, "What?" It's like, "No, the police aren't coming." And everyone had phoned them. They were at the edge of the park, but they weren't going to facilitate my escape. So then all the security have to crowd around me, and they have to link arms, and I'm in the middle, and we have to get through that 2,000 people to the edge. And at one point, and you've been in crowds, haven't you?
Yeah.
At one point, I'm going and I'm like 45 degrees, and I'm thinking, if I hit the floor, I'm never getting up.
Yeah, I've had crowds lift me off my feet. It's quite a feeling.
Yeah, it sort of acts as an organism, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It stops being individual people, and they just turn into this mob with a life of its own. And I genuinely thought I might not. If I get on the floor, I'm not going to get up. Or I was going to be crushed against the rotunda. And I get out and we get into the police car. And then I thought they're going to tip it because there weren't enough police. There were a load of police, but they weren't enough. And then we get in the police car and it goes away. And I had to hide in a police station under armed guard for about 6 hours. My husband got me a very nice flight home. It's the nicest flight I've ever taken. And
You just lay down there, Kellie-Jay.
Oh, it's so nice. I had to go upstairs. That's how nice the flight was. And I had to have arm protection to get to the airport. And then when I was in the airport, I was in the police building for a long time until I went to the airport lounge. And then the police said, I had 3 armed officers, and they said, "We're going to stay with you until you leave." And then I left. But like, my husband watched it on the live stream. I've got women that still can't watch it because they thought they were going to watch me get killed.
You were going to die. How do you like your men? How should a man be?
Well, he's here.
Apart from tall, very handsome and rugged.
My husband is like my literal dream man.
How should their traits be?
Well, I just like blokes. Like, I think there's an honesty. I don't want someone to join in if I'm crying. I don't cry very much myself. I'm more of an angry woman. But I just think, take your responsibilities, be the strongest person in the house, listen when it's really appropriate, but, just don't be a woman. Just don't be a woman. I mean that in the way that women are very complicated, unnecessarily complicated. I've always found male company a lot more easy. Women don't like to talk in really, well, like me, in quite honest, short sentences. You have to make everything really nice. But yeah, I think men are really uncomplicated.
So are you all for the gender roles?
Yes and no. I mean, my husband is this incredible cook.
Who would fend off the burglars if they turned up?
Oh my God, he would. There's no way I'm going downstairs. Someone said to me, I said, no woman wants to marry a man that says you go if there's a bump downstairs. And so I was like, oh, that's really sexist. I was like, okay then. I mean, I think a lot of men drive as well, don't they? When it's like a woman and a man driving in a car. I mean, that's so I can look at my phone, but I'm still happy.
I always like to drive when me and my partner are going places, yeah, even if I do fancy a drink. This may sound like a dramatic question to a lot of people watching, but I know the possibility of this happening, and you probably do too. Do you think one day there's a chance you could get murdered?
Oh, it just takes one rabid, obsessive, deranged person, doesn't it? But I'm quite careful. I do now go right into the thick of Speaker's Corner and talk about Islam and women's rights generally, but to that specific audience, which is mostly Muslim men. No, I don't think I don't think I do it. I have a responsibility to my kids. When I went to America, I did a tour of America, and I didn't go to Portland because there was someone saving. He had a GoFundMe for weapons so he could kill me.
See, that's what I mean.
Yeah. I'm sure I take a bit of extra risk because I speak about this thing, but what's the risk if I don't? Well, that more kids get gaslit by this. You don't even, to be damaged as a child by this, you don't even need to kind of want to cut your breasts off. you might just not be able to say that you don't believe it at school all day, every day. You can't say it. Your teacher's saying it. All your friends are saying it. You can't say that you think it's nonsense.
And how do we get through to the parents that are enabling them by affirming them? And what do we do with the surgeons that are actually like cutting child's parts off? I mean, that's a double-loaded question, but you can go off on one.
In the United States of America, they are doing that. I don't think there's any case of under 18s having even their breasts cut off in this country, but we have sterilised children. And we knew... I did some research into, I can't remember his name, but the guy that brought this all into the Tavistock in the 90s is a really sinister, as far as I can tell, it's a really sinister man. And I listened to his rationale for bringing in sterilising children in this country. And it was a disturbed, sexually abused or severely abused, traumatised, physically harmed girl. And that was one of his first cases. And she talks about her not being loved by her mum, and I think her mum had died, about being abused by her dad. They were all, and also being autistic. And there were all these real signifiers that you'd go, oh, that's a very damaged young woman. Not, that's a damaged young woman, let's help her cut her breasts off and be sterilised. So the underpinning of this is what? Delusions of grandeur. I mean, we've all met, I'm sure, surgeons and doctors who think they're God. So there's that.
And play God.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's that. There's money. There must be some kickback somewhere where people are getting like vast sums of cash. But in America, it's horrendous.
That's why I asked the question, because I know you've spent time over there.
So there are cases of cutting the breasts of a 12-year-old girl off.
I mean, come on.
It's just so gross. Like, normally we have to think of, why would someone do that? Why would someone do that? Well, I think Sociopath is about the only place I can go that offers an explanation. There's no good... You can't think for a moment that a 12, 13-year-old girl can know that she doesn't want breasts for her entire life. She hasn't even had sex yet. Like, she can't know what her body means, what it does, what good it is, unless... she's a fully grown adult, and I mean like 25. And even then, I don't think we should do it.
I mean, you said sociopath. For me, I think a surgeon that can chop a 12-year-old's breasts off is a psychopath. And if law was led by common sense, that surgeon should go to jail, double figures, no ifs, buts or maybes, and the parent that allowed it. That's my opinion.
Which is often the mother. So there's like the devouring mother. So there's a lot of these girls. I've seen them. These are Instagram click mothers. And they'll be like, did you take your testosterone today? Didn't we do well? And it's sinister as hell. It's like Mommy Dearest on acid. It's so nuts. And then you've got a girl who looks a bit like her mum, but maybe isn't as pretty as her mum. And she's got short hair, and the mum's sort of doing a lot of, are you sad? Because she wants like a crying moment to the camera. And these are, I don't know what these women would have done before. Buy a small dog.
What do they call
that?
Munchausen by proxy?
Yeah, it is Munchausen's by proxy. And it's all about the attention for the mum, because the mum, it'll be a daughter and a mother, and the mother will be looking at the daughter through the camera, because they've got the phone facing them, so that she'll be like looking like this. She won't be turning, and she won't be talking to her daughter. And
the Jeffrey Marsh characters of this world, they're, in my mind, he should go to jail for child abuse. He's certainly trying to indoctrinate children and brainwash them as opposed to brain cleanse them. And then when the parents pass the phone out, I've mentioned this before because I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. It's like you've got a fully grown man telling the parent to pass their phone to the child so the fully grown man can have a conversation with your child, and no one seems to be arresting him.
He makes my skin crawl.
Same. Yeah.
It's really bizarre, but it's quite, it's not funny because he's damaging, but he does a lot of no contact with parents. He does a lot of encouraging children to alienate from their parents.
If they don't affirm them. Oh, he's a fucking animal. Yeah, he's got to go. Have loose women ever invited you on their show? No, because they're all pro men in dresses. I don't think they would anyway, but they're men in dresses lovers, aren't they? Well, they had Kelly Maloney on the show, and... he's such a wonderful woman, isn't he? He's a brave, courageous woman. And India Willoughby. Is that her surname? His surname? Their surname?
Yes, I've been on this morning with India.
And I want to ask you the question, because people by now who know you, they would have watched that interview or that debate that you had on this morning. And if you haven't watched it, make sure after this you do go and watch it and then come back to this part here, because I want to know. I mean, you were sensational. What was the atmosphere like in the room when the cameras were off?
Oh, they were so unfriendly. Ruth was so awful. So I had Ruth and Eamon as opposed to whoever other two people that do it, Phil and Holly.
I was disappointed with Eamon.
Yeah, well, he was a liar, wasn't he? He squeezed my hand so hard. You know, like some men have that kind of, oh, my penis is massive handshake. Well, normally they don't do that for women. They just do it to other men. But he properly crushed I've only got little hands, and he properly crushed my hand. But anyway, India was... there's something called duper's delight when someone who's a narcissist is like fooling people, and India does quite a lot of duper's delight smiles.
And can you see it in his eyes?
Yeah, especially there was one bit, because obviously I knew what I was going into. I didn't want to come across and say, well, they're all raging perverts, aren't they? But I wanted to hold the line. And at one point I say, and I don't think India does remotely look like a woman, but I say in it, you know, obviously India looks like a woman, and I sort of meant dresses like a woman.
From 3 miles away.
And yeah, and he sort of goes like this, and he's all like really pleased with himself. But it was really odd. I imagined Ruth would probably be on the side of men, and Eamon might at least say something. He was like, so you're saying if I'm a policeman, and because one of the things is that a police officer who's a man can search a woman as long as he says he's a woman. And so I mentioned that, and that's all to do with the 2012 case where a policeman took the police force to court for under the Equality Act. And Eamon goes, but you saying you won't go along with that, or I shouldn't be able to search a woman. I'm like, you're literally saying a man can put his hand in a woman's pants because he says he's a woman. As
part of his profession. That's just ridiculous. Yeah, there'd be nobody putting their hands on my wife, mum or nan, I can tell you.
No, it's so mad.
It wouldn't be happening. I would happily get arrested off the back of that. My interference would get me in trouble. And the funny thing is, when you're dealing with a narcissist like that, you're at a lose-lose, because whether you agree or disagree, you give them their supply, but you still won.
Yes, well, I think I did, but there were 3 against 1. But I think I managed to hold firm without losing my temper.
You held the line.
Yes, I did.
Which is the phrase that you've coined. And with all this madness and flack that comes your way, why have you held the line so rigorously?
Because nobody else will, is one of the reasons, and I'm not having it. Any concession, any kind of anything we give these men, we take from women. So why the hell would I give them anything? Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, rights are a pie. We keep getting told rights aren't a pie. They are a pie. If a man has a right to a woman's space, the woman loses the right to having a woman-only space because a bloke's in there. So I'm just not doing it. I'm not affording... When it comes to compassion and who I care about, you have real live examples of 2 people. There's a 50-year-old bloke who's decided he's a woman, and there's a 15-year-old girl. And both of them want to use a women-only space. Now, who am I on the side of? Well, it's not the bloke, is it? It's never going to be that bloke. It's always going to be the girl. And there's always going to be a woman that loses when a man decides that he's allowed access to those spaces. So I just won't do it. I think that it makes no sense. I won't concede. I won't sort of cede language. I won't do any of that. I'm just not doing it.
Well, speaking of men, Eddie Izzard, is he body dysphoric or is he a perverted narcissist?
He's a perverted narcissist, 100%. He talks about an attack when he's like 19 or 20. He goes in a women's toilet and gets changed. And when he comes out, there's 3 13-year-old girls in the toilet. And they're like, proper London, what are you doing, girls? And I think they chase him out of the toilet. And he talks about him being the victim in that circumstance.
Oh, there you go. That's narcissist 101. Yeah, you're either the hero or the victim, but you're never the villain, no matter what the situation. Should a trans person be an MP? Should they be in a position of power? Are they of sound mind?
No, I don't even know if it's a sound mind issue. There is no person who calls himself trans who isn't a trans activist. Because their compulsion, the whole fetishy side of it and the narcissism, their compulsion is to move everything for their ideology, for their belief system. So you can't really trust them in anything. Like, I'm banned from my GP, by the way, because I don't have a doctor at the moment. So, and I live streamed them banning me because they rang and I happened to be doing a live stream, so I let them do it. But I basically said to the receptionist, who was wearing a he/him badge with enormous breasts.
Oh, the pronouns.
Yeah, this woman with massive breasts, short hair. She just looks like a regular woman with short hair. And I said, I don't think it's appropriate for you to be wearing a political symbol at work. And she said, it's got nothing to do with my job. And I said, exactly. Don't wear it then, because you are making it part of your job, and I don't think it's appropriate. And I got banned from my GP.
Again, more insanity, but I can confirm it cuts both ways. Men don't have vaginas. Never,
What?
They never. Oh, I wouldn't lie to you. And also, they never will have vaginas either.
No.
Never in a million years. So even, sometimes you sort of buckle here and there just out of politeness. I tend not to myself, and I'm pretty sure you don't.
No.
You don't buy into the whole pronoun nonsense. And what's the reason for that?
So if somebody was sort of coming late this afternoon to my house and someone said, she'll arrive. And say they're arriving at 8 o'clock and I'm in the house on my own and it's she. I have a totally different response to that. And not even that conscious. A woman's coming to the house. A man coming to my house at 8 o'clock at night when it's dark in the winter. I have a different sort of game plan. And I don't think women even know that we do it. So pronouns are really, really important, and they deliver lots and lots of information very, very quickly that we don't actually process, but we have instinctive responses to. And so you can't start confusing it with she. Plus, if you call a man a woman, if you call him a trans woman and you say she, then she can't use the women's toilets is a much more difficult thing to say. And that's how this stuff has managed to get where it is, because you switch the language and then you don't really know what you're talking about.
That is such a good answer. And that should flick a switch with people. It's like,
hopefully,
come on, listen to the logic.
Well, she's going to babysit your kids. Imagine that. You hire a babysitter and then she's going to babysit your kids. Or Janet's coming to babysit your kids. And then you open the door and it's 6'2" Janet with a cock.
Big handsome bloke like your husband. Rugged.
No one's going to leave their children. All these people that say, oh, trans women are women. You ain't leaving your kids. You're not leaving your kids with 6'2" Janet. You're not going, well, we'll have a lovely time, darling. Let's go for a Chinese. You're not going to do that. Yeah,
we'll soon see how pro-trans they are when it comes to the babysitter. I saw in the Telegraph a few days ago that they used the term trans toddler. And I skipped past the actual article itself because I thought, I'll wait until I speak to you. The terms trans child and trans toddlers. I mean, it seems like an insane question to even have to ask, but what the fuck is that all about? Usually
a mother with Munchausen's by proxy. That's what that's about. And also, it's using children as a human shield to protect men with their fetishes. Because if you talk about trans children, then it becomes a something other than a fetish. You can't say a toddler's got a fetish, can you? Or a 7-year-old boy has got a fetish. But you can say that of a 50-year-old bloke who's in a PVC skirt. You can say that. So in order to validate and make it easier for these men to hide in plain sight, you create this whole idea that children are trans.
It's such a shame that the mainstream media, particularly somebody like the Telegraph, are even buying into that bullshit and being so audacious that they're actually going to put those words to print. It's like, fucking hell, you're part of the problem here.
That's to do with trans lobby groups going into places like there's a group called Press for Change. So they will have, there's style guides and things, which are the way that the press have to talk about certain issues. And a long, long time ago, before we were even really talking about this issue, they put in the style guides that if a man calls himself a woman, you have to call him a woman. unless it's absolutely integral to the story that you reveal his sex. Well, I think it's always integral to a story to know what sex somebody is. So on the very basis of that, I think we should always know. And I don't think that any man should have a certificate or any identification that says he's a woman, ever. And no woman should either.
Yeah, because if you're a man and you live a certain period of time as a woman, i.e. put heels and a dress on, you can get your driver's licence changed to miss, can't you?
Yes. Yeah. And what for? Like, who is that for? And if it's not for men to get into women's spaces, what is it for? Because that's all, like, it goes back to the European Court of Human Rights, and there was a very famous case against Land Rover Jaguar. Or Jaguar over Land Rover, whichever way around you're supposed to say it. But this man basically fought to be recognised as female. And then we had the GRA. Now, what is the Gender Recognition Act? It's based upon this case to afford somebody the privacy and dignity of family life. Like, that's kind of the foundation of all of this, is to give someone privacy. Well, privacy to do what exactly? Because if it's not for that man to get in a woman-only space, therefore, he is outed when he goes in a men's toilet, even though we can all see from a country mile that he's a bloke. None of these men pass, and certainly don't pass in the flesh, even if they do in a photo. But, you know, the whole concept of somebody having what I would describe as a legal fiction, to be able to say that in law they are something that they're not, is nuts.
Before I move on to the more serious side of this, because for me, the whole purpose of me wanting to have chats with courageous women like you is because I think if we can chop the head off the snake, the children are going to have a much better chance of survival and live a nice, normal life. And for me, preserving the innocence of a child is so important, as it is, and it should be for most people. But before we get to sort of a more sort of sinister side, the whole trans woman, trans man thing, I mean, I'm struggling not to crack jokes the whole way you mention things, because for me, I just think it's so ludicrous. And when I said about comedians having the ability to have stomped this out a long time ago, I remember it could be American Pie. I don't know if you remember this. There was like an American film. Let's just say it was American Pie or Old School with Will Ferrell. And there was a PE teacher called Mrs. Mann. And it was a big, butch, stubbly woman with the PE skirt. And he would put his foot up on the side, and a great big set of bollocks would swing down, but it was meant to be a woman. So there was a time where it was ridiculed. There was a time where it was safe to mock trans men, women, unwell. What do we call them? But do you know what I mean? There was a time where it was safe to joke about the trans ideology. And then it went to a space where if you do, you're having death threats, you feel like you're going to be crushed to death, you've got people rocking the car that you're in, you've got people targeting your children, you're being debanked. So it really got there pretty quick.
It did get there very quick, and it got there very quick with this covert kind of lobby groups. So they went round the back while we were all fast asleep to this. So then they were in the lobby group. There's like the Equality Bench book, which is the judges. So in a court of law, you'll be forced to use the pronouns. So if you're a victim and you're raped by a man who calls himself a woman, you have to say she, her in the court. I mean, I wouldn't, no matter what. But that is the direction of the judges. It's insane. So all of this sort of apparatus, these are really often well-educated, well-connected, elite men. They're not men that, well, sometimes they're men that have worked on a building site and got their hands dirty for a job, but often they're not. They're well-paid professional men who can get away with doing this without getting beaten up on their way home because they live in nice areas. And so those men did something called the Yoga Carta Principles. I'll try and be very brief because it's a little bit complicated. But anyway, they got together. They were like, their dream, what would their dream society look like for them, these cross-dressing men? And they came up with sexual orientation and gender identity would be the division of people, not sex. Because obviously they can't do sex because then they're in with the rest of the men. So in order to facilitate their own fetish, they came up with sexual orientation and gender identity. And you will find echoes of this now in everything, where your kids are being asked at school, like my son was asked recently at school about his sexual orientation. I'm like, he's 15. That's a real invasion of his privacy. It's like weird that you would ask that. Like, what for? Why would you ask my son that? And kids are being asked about their gender identity. And so those two things become more important than everything else. That's why we are where we are. That all of these things, all of these lobby groups have been working towards this particular issue because it's lucrative. It's very lucrative. Like the gay rights movement was lucrative, and then everyone got gay rights. So then they needed to find a new cash cow.
Subtle signs of grooming that you've seen. Grooming in the sense of sort of planting seeds in a child's brain that they could possibly be in the wrong body. I mean, for me, I've seen books in school shelves with pregnant men. What sort of signs have you seen that parents need to be looking out for?
Well, this is a great one. So your child's school, so for your listeners and viewers, your child's school might be a rainbow champion or a no outsider school or an educate and celebrate school or a jigsaw school or an all sorts school. So these are lobby groups that have gone in at the expense of the school and taught them a load of crap when it comes to the Equality Act. And they will put books in a school. So I went in with a mother, and I'm telling you as well that your audience should know that teachers lie, barefaced lie to adults. Like, if you think that the majority of your children's teachers are good people, I mean, you may well be right, but I have a very dim view of teachers at the moment. But if you just guarantee that unless you see something with your own eyes, they're not telling the truth to you. And they will lie to you. And I'm including safeguarding leads. So I've seen a book. I went in with a mum, and she was really concerned about her 2 daughters. And she mentioned this book, which is about a crayon. And the upshot is that it's a story about gender identity and about how this crayon was really a boy, but it was a red crayon with a blue wrapper or something like that. And I said, this is gender identity. Oh, no, well, we know that some schools may use it like that. That's not how we use it. It's all about difference and celebrating difference and inclusion. So if your school talks about inclusion and diversity, you should be well warned. Anyway, they go on, and I just stop them and I say, look, I just want to, how did the book get into the school? They said, oh, it's a No Outsiders program. I said, well, at the moment, I'm just worrying. I'm asking myself, are you liars or are you stupid? Because that's the only 2 explanations for you not seeing what this book is about. So you've definitely got books. You've also got little things in loads of lessons. So right across the curriculum, you will have they when you would normally have he or she. Like, not just like they don't know, but they'll show you a picture of a child and then it will be a they. You might be called, one of my children's school wrote to me as MX instead of Mrs.
What does MX mean?
Well, yeah, exactly. But it's like gender neutral kind of salutation. And I'm like, I'm their mum. I carried them in my womb. I deserve to be recognised as a female. Thanks very much.
And I know who I am.
Yeah. And then all the way through, it was talking about my daughter. It was they. I was like, well, she's a she. She's not a they. But they gender neutralised this. In 2015, so this is how long this has been going on, one of the dinner staff told me at my son's primary school, they were no longer allowed to say good boy and good girl. So along with what they're pushing, which is other types of language, like they and gender neutral stuff, they're also removing language. So that's how kind of the erasure and the sort of gaslighting of language works. In one respect, you remove it. So like for a woman, you remove a pregnant woman. She's a birthing person. She's a chest feeder. She's a menstruator, a cervix haver. So you take the word woman from woman, but then you can use the word woman when you mean anyone who identifies as a woman. So that's the 2-way. When it just belongs to women, you don't use the word woman. When you want it to belong to everybody, you can use the word woman. So you both erase it in one respect, but you share it in other respects. And that's how you totally fuck with language.
And really change the wiring of someone's mind over time.
So it'll be that. That's what's happening in school.
That's so much darker the more you think about it. It's dark, it's sinister, and it's fucking crafty.
And it's taking parents away from their children. Because if you teach a child an ideology and a way of thinking, that means if they don't go along with it, they're not kind, they're horrible people, and then they go home and their parents are unkind and horrible people, that is proper separation from your children, which I think might not be the intention of every teacher doing it, but it's certainly the intention of the architects of this.
And if you throw that in the mix with influencers encouraging no contact for not affirming you, wow, we've got not just a shitstorm, but there's a war on our hands here. What is nullification surgery?
Oh, that's so gross. So that basically removes every single bit of kind of that nipple, belly button, genitals, except for kind of places to go to the toilet. So you'll look like a kind of a Barbie doll.
And this also goes on.
Yeah, it goes on. You'll get some men that have a vagina created and keep their penis. I mean, they can't really have a vagina created because they are pretty marvellous things that you can't just create. Who knew? But they will have their testicles pushed up to create a hole so they can fuck themselves.
Oh, so they'll keep the penis on top of the vagina so they can sort of arc it back round and feed it in.
I don't know if they can genuinely do that, but
the idea is there. Yeah, we walk amongst some fucking maniacs.
Yeah, and we've always walked among... There's always been maniacs. I wonder if mania is a bit more at the moment because we live such weird lives where people don't have purpose or belief or society or culture or... Yeah, there's a lot missing.
There's a lot of lost people.
Yeah, and so they're searching for something that we didn't used to have. Well, we probably did used to have surgeons who would do it as well, but we recognise them as mental.
We're talking to surgeons, so do you think, like... when boob jobs become a new thing, it was a new thing, but then all of a sudden now, if you haven't had a boob job, you're in the minority. Do you think the likes of boob jobs have played a part in this escalation of madness?
Yeah, because have you seen, like, some of the really rich women in America who've had all of their face done, and they begin to look quite masculine because they've had so much filler that their faces are kind of build up.
Jaw squares off.
And they look really...
cheekbones.
Yeah, and they look quite masculine. And I wonder if men... if women don't look like women, if a 60-year-old woman doesn't look like a 60-year-old woman, then maybe it's easier for a man to think that he also can look like a woman. But cosmetic surgery, there's a man called Miles. He's got a Harley Street. He does so-called gender-affirming care, so he cuts off women's breasts for fun and a lot of cash. And he's commissioned, so I think he's something, but he's commissioned like oil paintings of him slicing breasts.
Oh, so it's now...
So when you walk in the surgery.
Wow, mutilating someone's natural body is now considered art.
I've seen a picture. Have you seen it? Where there's a guy in America and this person's holding up and they've got 2 buckets of breasts. They've got 2 buckets of, like, severed breasts.
Welcome to 2025.
So horrendous.
Yeah, that is horrendous. What about pornography? Do you think that's played a part? Does it play a part?
Yes, I think it does. I think it's a dehumanising, terrible, terrible thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I stopped watching it years ago. Period. I realise that pornography is a soul snatcher, but also I can quite easily see how that kind of desensitising or just changing the perspective of making love, it could lead to all sorts of sort of mind-warping defects, such as, am I in the right body? But how does it get there? Well,
Pornhub have admitted that what they do is they introduce, so if you've got if you go and watch a video and then you get suggestions of what to watch next, they've said that they change the content. So if you go in and I don't know too much about Pornhub, but I'm guessing you go in and you can pick whatever you like, and then maybe you get like trans porn suggested or gay porn is suggested. Like they have said that they want to make heterosexual men less heterosexual.
There you go then. Yeah, you're watching normal pornography thinking you're just going about your daily wank. All of a sudden, trans porn, and then before you know it, you like the look of that. Next thing you know, you want to be one. So you said Speaker's Corner. You mentioned that you go there.
Yes.
Again, I tip my hat and admire your bravery there because Speaker's Corner is not what it used to be. We have sort of Bob's become a regular here. He does our Christmas special, Easter special, and he's going to do our St George's Day special next year. I mean, he's a staunch Christian. I'm not. I'm atheist. But we've got mutual respect, and so I know how Speaker's Corner has become. Well, it's become volatile. So how do you
Fancy that.
Yeah, why is that?
God, it's so. I mean, I've seen some very sinister behaviour at Speaker's Corner. I mean, clearly it is dominated by Muslim men, but I've seen some very well-heeled Muslim men whispering into people's ears. You know, and you just know that they're very well-connected, sinister men, and they don't play by the rules of Speaker's Corner either. But I've decided that we can lose things and we can moan about it, or we can go and take up some space. And we used to do it at Speaker's Corner. So I started at Speaker's Corner quite some years ago to talk about this issue. And women's voices couldn't be heard. And some of the women that come and speak at my events, because I go every month to Speaker's Corner, we go to the Reformers Tree. But some of those women are talking about being survivors or being worried about their non-verbal daughters not having access to single-sex care. And the last thing I want those women to do when they're sharing their story is have to shout over blokes. Because whilst I've got quite a strong voice, a lot of women don't, and they end up not being heard. So we take ourselves to somewhere a bit more quiet. But I've decided, since Palestine took over London, I've decided that I want to go there every month when we do our regular Speaker's Corner at Reformers Tree and go down right to the thick of Speaker's Corner and just take up some space and talk about the fact that they've changed the law in Iraq to mean you can marry a 9-year-old, about the women in Afghanistan, about the women serving time in Iran for showing their hijab, and specifically about Pakistani Muslim pedophile gangs. And I say that quite loudly. And it does, I mean, I think these men think that they're a bit miffed about what is this? Because I'm quite little. I'm like 5'1", and I have peroxide blonde hair, and I'm not 20. And so I think they're all a bit like, what's going on? But I don't spend that long there. The point is to say that we're coming and there's nothing you can do about it. And I think more, you know, if you're worried about what's happening to this country and you think that there is an enemy within, or you think that the Islamification of this country is something that worries you, then go and take up space in places where you do have the right to speak about these things. And, you know, it doesn't have to be a battleground, but it might have to be a battleground. It doesn't have to be a violent one, but you do have to, you can sit and moan about it, or you can do something about it. And I've decided that I want to do something about it.
Yeah, again, kudos to you. I mean, by rights, you should have every single female in the world behind you. I truly believe that. And when I was doing my due diligence for today's interview, I could only ever find you on talk shows or podcasts where the host is disagreeing or playing devil's advocate with you about this whole trans ideology. And I sort of couldn't really get into it because I thought, well, I'll ask you the question. Are those interviews staged? Because you've not said one thing that I would possibly consider pushing back on. So I'm thinking, surely, like, everyone knows that 2 + 2 is 4, and if you've got a penis, you're a man. If you've got a vagina, you're a woman, and there's no in between. Are they staged?
No, but I think, look, it's either right or wrong, right? I'm quite clear on things are either right or wrong, and sometimes the wrong things can become right, and vice versa. But I'm pretty clear on what I think about stuff. And I think there's people that pontificate over stuff. They think about stuff because it's not that real. And so if you spend your life, like, this is why this whole crap happened in academia, because people are sitting around going, yeah, but, you know, what about if he really does think he's a woman? Like, And you're like, well, what about it? What difference does that bloody make to me?
What about who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Like, so what? Like, oh, yeah, but, you know, he was really upset. Okay, well, sometimes I'm upset. Doesn't mean I expect the world to change because, you know, I might think that I'm 30, but I'm pretty sure that nobody meets me goes, oh, yeah, she's definitely 30. You know, it's just, it's, I think that's what happens in these interviews. So there's people that are trying to go through this thought process and they have no idea that what they do when they ask their questions is they basically say, I couldn't give a shit about women and girls. They don't know that they're saying that. I don't want to be one of those women that wangs on about sexism or misogyny or like how much men hate women. But I find it very difficult to get to a point where I'm like, well, this can only happen if people don't give a shit about women and girls. It can't happen there's no other way that something that takes away women's spaces and rights and language, there's no way that happens in a society where women and girls are valued.
It's for the betterment of the world and a safer environment that we keep the majority of people safe. And on this occasion, we're talking about women and children and the vulnerable. Not that women are vulnerable, you know what I mean.
I'm quite happy to be vulnerable. I'm also like pretty feisty, but I recognise that, you know, if I walk home on my own and my husband does, actually I think men are more likely to be attacked, but women are more likely to get seriously hurt with kind of the sort of violence that men can dish out. And
certainly nowadays more than ever. And yes, a growing concern for me. And you do seem, well, you are tremendously stoic. Has there ever been a time though where you've broke?
There's been a couple of times when women on my own side have gone out of their way to attack me, and I've probably cried, but that was more out of absolute rage. Just real
temper tears.
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess we all sort of arrive at a place with all the things that have happened in our lives, and I'm quite acutely aware of what is right and wrong. Like I have a real sense of justice. My husband used to say that I would get punched because I'll go and if someone's like being horrible to their kid in public. I mean, I don't mean telling off because we all quite like kids. If naughty kids are getting told off, we feel a bit sorry for the kid, but we're all happy that they're getting told off, right? But I've gone up to a woman before who threatened her child with being locked in a cupboard and violence, and I'll go and say something. So I'm kind of that woman. But in this movement, the one thing it has taught me is that I think feminists are amongst the worst women I've ever had to spend any time with or do anything with. And I'm really not surprised that women aren't further in their bid for whatever it is that feminists are still asking for. But horrific behaviour, like the worst of female behaviour.
Would there have been a period in time where you would have considered yourself a feminist?
Really short amount of time, because I think feminism, when I was growing up, we had, so I was born in 1974, so we had the Spice Girls, because we had girl power. And I think we all sort of, it was such an upward kind of trend for me. From Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister, the Queen was the monarch. Like, there wasn't anything that you couldn't do. Margaret Thatcher obviously was a shopkeeper. My parents happened to have a sweet shop. So the trajectory of women from any strata, I guess, was pretty great.
Previously, you were left-leaning?
I was left-leaning in a kind of a Tony Blair left. Whether that's left or not now, I don't know. And I still don't know to this day, has the left changed or was I stupid or a combination of both? I don't know. But yeah, I called myself a feminist for a really short period of time, for about 5 years.
I think I was certainly an ideological person when I was a younger man. I wanted everyone to get along and love each other and let's all squash our differences and move along together. But the older you get, you realise some people are not going to budge, and so you've kind of got to take a side.
Yes,
unfortunately, and make a stand, which is what you've done. What are your fears and fortunes for the future? What do you fear is going to happen, and what are you optimistic about as well? Bit of a yin and yang.
My fear is that this government will bring in legislation to stop people being able to speak. I think the more globalist we become, I think, eventually we'll end up in a feudal system where there are serfs and there are barons. And I think where the globalist agenda is very much like that. I fucking hate the whole net zero stuff. All this ideology, and I'm like you, I'm an atheist, right? And I wonder whether...
Amen.
I wonder whether that actually is the vacuum that's been created, that we're not part of a community where there is something bigger and better than ourselves. So I worry about that.
I will say at this moment in time, though, because I think it's important that I am a cultural Christian, you would say, and I really want Christian values restored in the UK because I don't want any other religious values restored in the UK. So for that, I actually do support, I sort of call it a Christian movement because I can't really buy into religion. And I've even been to the church several times since I committed to Bob of Speaker's Corner. And to me, if there was ever a reason not to believe in God, it was because of what I saw, sort of felt and heard in a church. But I know that people need religion, but please, by God, make it a wholesome one.
See, I would like to go back to school assemblies where you have a little bit of God. Like, I've never believed in God, but you have a jolly good sing.
Yes.
And do the hymns.
Let's get the carols out.
I really love a come and praise. So I can still remember verbatim all of the school hymns that we used to sing.
Not call for prayer.
No.
Hymns.
Yeah. I worry about the fact that we now have, in one of our cities, we do have call to prayer. You know, I just think,
How?
Why would we, when we're in a recession with our religious belief, why would we bring in another that's more prescriptive, barbaric, just horrendous? I can't think of an aspect of the Muslim religion that I agree with, and so I've got a theology degree. I went to university and I studied religion as an atheist.
I see you're pretty qualified then.
I'm pretty qualified. But there's not a country in the world that is dominated by Islam that is one that I would want to go to. I just don't. The disconnect between this virtue signalling and the people we're importing and that are filling up our cities. And now I think, what are my kids living in? Like, what's going to be for their kids?
Yeah, what's it going to become?
Like,
That's my
Jesus.
fear. I think you and me are probably going to be okay, but it's when we're gone, what's going to happen? It's interesting that we've gone down the Islam route.
Sorry.
It does every single time. There's a lot of people concerned about it, even if it's not even on the roadmap of questions that I've got in mind. It keeps coming up from sort of everybody and from all walks of life. But I've got a British imam coming on next week. What question would you like? Give me one question you'd like me to ask him, and I will.
How is a woman better served by Islam than she is by not being part of Islam? Why is it in a Muslim country women have such a dreadful existence?
I'm going to ask him that, and you have my word, and I'll forward you the link when it goes out because, you know, he's going to come on. He said he's going to be really honest, and I said, well, so am I, and we come in peace. But yeah, final question, and it's really kind of your question. Without me asking you a question, is there anything you'd like to say or like to end this on, something important to you that you want to say to people listening and watching?
Well, I've recently had a lady from Canada contact me, and the silencing of parents and the disconnect we have with our children when it comes to what they're learning in school, I think, and this one's for dads really, this is what you can do, dads. What happens when you talk to schools as a woman is you're heard as a whiner. So I'd like it not to be true, but it's true, that people just hear a woman moaning. If a man says, I don't want my daughter in a changing room with a boy, that's taken seriously. So I would beg of all parents watching this, find out your school's policies and understand that it's a legal duty of a school not to have mixed-sex toilets after the age of 8. Now, what that means is not just the toilets, but also the sink and the place to dry your hands has to be single-sex or fully enclosed. So if your child's going in a cubicle to use a loo and then coming out and washing their hands, that is a mixed-sex toilet. That is not a single-sex toilet. So every school has a duty under the HSE to provide single-sex facilities for your children. And it is your duty as parents, really. You have the most power in that school. Your kid can't say it. They may get social suicide and nobody speaks to them. But you can say it, and you should say it, and you should ensure that you know what they're being taught, that you know what ideologies are being taught, and we can bring in Islam again here. That includes how much is your child being taught about Islam, because that's another worrying thing that's also coming in. But I feel there is a definite push with all of Labour's policies, including getting kids into like daycare so their mums can go and do a job they hate for minimum pay. Just go and be involved, because nobody loves your children like you do.
And where can people find you?
So I'm on YouTube as Kellie-Jay''𝐿𝐵𝐿. I'm on Twitter. You might find me somewhere as the Posey Parker, which is the name I used to go by. But I'm YouTube, Instagram, everywhere. And come to letwomenspeak.org and buy some merch.
Well, I see your strength, I admire your courage, and I tip my hat to your testicular fortitude.
Thanks.
And I'm very grateful you come on to share your wealth of knowledge with me, and I hope that you make a difference, and I will be cheering for you, not from the shadows, from the front line.
Thank you very much.
Good health and to a good
Really
future.
nice to see you. Thank
And
you.
Thank you.